family moves into an old house with secrets buried deep below. When they discover a chained door in the hallway, strange whispers begin to haunt their nights. As their young son starts hearing voices and something begins to stir beneath the floorboards, they realize the house was never empty. Dive into the chilling horror story, The Basement Beneath, where every wall breathes, every shadow watches, and the past refuses to stay buried. If you're a fan of unsettling supernatural tales, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. New nightmares await you every day. The moving truck disappeared behind a veil of autumn leaves as it rumbled away, leaving the Harwick family standing before their new home, a 2-story Victorian relic that hadn't seen love in decades. Ivy clung to its outer walls like the fingers of something trying to keep it buried. The windows were old, their glass wavy and dull, like the eyes of a long-dead animal. Elliot Harwick, 42, gripped the last box and nudged the front door open with his shoulder. "Home, sweet home," he muttered with a strained smile. His wife, Mara, followed behind with a bundle of blankets in her arms. 12-year-old Lily trailed after them, her wide-eyed curiosity dampened by the eerie creak of the house's wooden floors. But it was 6-year-old Jonah who stopped short on the threshold, staring into the dimness of the foyer like he saw something no one else did. "Is someone already down there?" he asked quietly. Elliot paused. "Down where, buddy?" Jonah didn't answer. He just pointed toward the hallway at the end of the entrance corridor, where a narrow door was half hidden behind a standing coat rack. The door was nothing special at first glance, just old wood and chipped paint. But what made it strange was the thick iron chain wrapped around it, fastened with a rusted padlock. Someone had gone to considerable effort to keep whatever was behind that door from coming out. Mara's gaze lingered on the door. Why would anyone chain a basement shut? "No idea," Elliot said, trying to sound light. "Probably some weird safety precaution. Old houses come with old quirks." Lily glanced at the door again as she passed. The air seemed cooler near it, still, like it was holding its breath. That night, after they'd unpacked enough to feel half settled, the house fell into a heavy silence. The kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful, more like a held note before something terrible in a symphony. The wind howled outside, floorboards creaked randomly, but these were things they expected. What no one could explain was the sound that began just after 2:13 a.m. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the chained door. Lily sat up in bed, eyes scanning the dark. Her room was directly above the hallway. She pressed her ear to the floor. Tap, tap. Then a pause, and something new. A whisper. Faint, indistinct, but definitely a voice. She couldn't make out the words. It was like someone was speaking from behind layers of stone and dirt. But the voice was insistent, and it was saying her name. "Lee, Lee," she gasped and jumped back. Her heart thudded wildly. She shook it off as a dream and pulled the covers tight. But sleep never returned that night. Downstairs, Jonah stood in the hallway, in his pajamas, barefoot on the cold floor. His small hand reached toward the chained door. On the other side, something whispered to him in a voice that mimicked his mother's. Almost. "Come downstairs, Jonah. It's okay." But the cadence was wrong. The warmth was missing. And Jonah, young as he was, didn't move. He just whispered back, "You're not Mommy." Silence. Then a scraping sound behind the door, like nails dragged across stone. By morning, Mara found him curled up on the carpet, asleep in front of the door. "Jonah?" she said gently, brushing his hair aside. He blinked up at her. "I was just listening," he murmured. "Listening to what, sweetheart?" He pointed at the door. Elliot knelt beside them, rubbing his chin. "Okay, that's enough of this." He stood up and reached for the padlock. "We are cutting this thing off today. I want to know what's back there." "No!" Jonah's voice was sharp. He grabbed his father's hand. "Don't open it." "Please." Mara frowned. "Honey, what's got you so scared?" He stared at the door. "It's not locked to keep us out. It's locked to keep something in." Elliot hesitated. Later that day, curiosity won over caution. He brought out his old bolt cutters. With a loud snap, the chain fell to the floor in a heavy tangle. The sound echoed through the house like a bell tolling the arrival of something unwanted. The door creaked open. Dust spiraled into the air, and a wave of stale, damp cold rose from the basement like a sigh of relief. The air smelled of wet stone and mold, and something older, like turned soil. He flicked on the flashlight and descended. The steps groaned beneath him. Mara waited at the top, calling after him nervously. "Do you see anything?" He scanned the space. It was larger than expected. Stone walls, low ceiling, no light fixtures. Shelves lined the back wall. Empty now, but thick with grime. Cobwebs danced in the flashlight's beam like pale ghosts. And then he heard it. A faint sound almost beneath his feet. A muffled knock. Knock, knock, knock. He crouched, shone the light at the stone floor. Something was wrong with the pattern of the bricks. One was looser than the others. He reached out, fingers trembling slightly, and pried it up. Inside was a hollow space, barely large enough to fit a shoebox. And in it, a small porcelain doll, face cracked, eyes missing, arms outstretched as if reaching upward, and clutched in its hand a clump of reddish blonde hair. Mara gasped from above. "What is it?" He didn't answer. The air shifted. Behind him, the door creaked, then slammed shut. Total darkness. And then, breathing. Slow, ragged, not his. From the other side of the room, the flashlight flickered once, twice, then died. And in that black silence, Elliot heard the whisper. Right behind him. "Hello!" The basement door didn't open until sunrise. Mara found it ajar when she came downstairs, barefoot and groggy from a night of broken sleep. The house had groaned more than usual, not just the occasional settling or wind brushing against old shutters, but deep, unnatural creaks that pulsed through the walls like something shifting inside the bones of the house. She stared at the door, its chain lying coiled on the floor like a dead serpent. "Elliot?" she called, but her voice sounded small in the vast silence of morning. "Elliot, are you down there?" No reply. She stepped forward, peering into the black mouth of the basement. The stale air smelled faintly of old wood and something more metallic now, something like rust or blood. She hesitated, hand trembling as she reached for the flashlight left on the nearby table. Its casing was cold, colder than it should have been. When she flicked the switch, it stayed dark. The batteries had drained overnight. From behind her, Jonah appeared, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy," he whispered, "it's still in the basement." Mara turned. "What is?" He didn't answer, just backed away slowly, staring past her into the dark, then hurried up the stairs, blanket dragging behind him. Lily was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed with headphones pressed tight to her ears. She wasn't listening to music. Instead, she had the voice recording app open on her phone, something she'd set up the night before to try and catch the strange tapping. She hit play. Silence. Then a breath. Not hers. Then a whisper, low and grainy, like it had been dragged across gravel. "Come down. Play with us." Lily dropped the phone. The voice wasn't human. It was too dry, too strained, like someone trying to speak without lungs. Downstairs, Mara finally found Elliot. He was in the kitchen, seated at the table, staring into a steaming mug of untouched coffee. His eyes were bloodshot, hands trembling slightly. His hair was matted with sweat and dust. He hadn't changed out of the clothes from yesterday. "You scared the hell out of me," she said, setting the useless flashlight on the counter. "You were down there all night?" He didn't look up. "I think I fell. I don't remember." "You didn't come to bed. I called and called." He blinked slowly. "There was something in the corner. I saw it move." Her voice lowered. "What was it?" "I don't know." She waited, but he didn't elaborate. That night, the sounds returned. At 2:13 a.m., the house seemed to hold its breath. Then came the tapping. Faint, but rhythmic. Then the whispering started again, louder now, as if whatever was speaking had grown bolder. Lily lay frozen under her blankets, trying not to breathe too loudly. Her phone recorded again, but this time she didn't listen to it. Not yet. Jonah was up too. He was sitting at the foot of his bed, staring at the door like he was waiting for someone. "Mommy's downstairs," he whispered to no one. "She's calling me." But Mara was asleep, or at least she was trying to be. She stirred at the sound of something thudding lightly against the wall behind her headboard. A slow, dragging noise that came from the other side, the basement side. In the pitch black of the hallway, something moved. The air grew colder. The floor moaned beneath weight that shouldn't have been there. Lily's door creaked open slowly. She sat up, heart hammering in her chest. "Jonah?" she whispered. No answer, just breathing. Ragged, wet. She reached for her lamp. The moment her fingers touched the switch, it snapped on with a blinding flicker. No one was there. The hallway was empty. She got up and crossed to the doorway, peering into the dark stretch of corridor. Then she heard it. A giggle, childlike, but distorted, like it had been dragged backward through static. The sound came from the basement. In the morning, the family sat together in tense silence. Elliot hadn't touched his food. Jonah refused to look anyone in the eye. And Lily finally played the recording from the night before. What she captured this time chilled her to her core. First, the tapping. Then, multiple voices. Children's voices. "Come down, come play. You're already one of us." Then a louder voice, a woman's voice, calm and sweet. "She's listening now. Soon they all will." Mara stood up, hands shaking. "That's enough. We're calling someone. A priest, an investigator, anyone. I'm not letting this continue." Elliot said nothing. He stared at the basement door. That night, Mara locked the basement again. She wrapped the chain tighter, added a new padlock, and wedged a chair beneath the knob. But it didn't stop the whispers. At 2:13 a.m., the whispers started again. This time, from inside the walls. Every room. Every hallway. Every corner. A chorus of voices, like a playground at recess, but warped, echoing with something ancient and cruel beneath the laughter. Mara held Jonah tight in her arms, whispering a prayer she hadn't said since childhood. Elliot stood outside the basement door again, jaw clenched, holding the doll he'd found beneath the floor. Its porcelain skin had cracked further. Its mouth had opened slightly. And from that tiny, chipped mouth came the sound of distant laughter. The same laugh Jonah made when he was happy. Only this time, it didn't sound like joy. It sounded like hunger. The third night brought rain. Not the cleansing kind, but a slow, persistent drizzle that tapped against the windows like fingernails on glass. The gutters overflowed, trickling dirty water down the warped siding. The sky hung low, as if pressing down on the house itself. Inside, the Harwicks moved quietly through the day, speaking in half-whispers, avoiding the basement door. The padlock Mara had added remained in place, but each member of the family sensed it wasn't enough. The chain looked looser now, like it had shifted in the night, or like something behind the door had tugged it, testing its limits. At noon, Elliot called a contractor to inspect the basement structure. The man arrived around 3, grizzled, heavy-set, and uninterested in small talk. He stepped inside, sniffed the air, and muttered, "Something's rotting in here." Elliot forced a chuckle. Old house smell. The contractor's eyes lingered on the chained door. "You want me to check behind that?" Elliot nodded. "We just moved in. There's some weird noises down there. Might be pipes or rats." The contractor pulled the chain free, and the door creaked open with a long, slow moan. The smell was worse now. Damp, sour, faintly metallic. He clicked on a flashlight and descended without a word. The Harwicks waited upstairs. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Then came a loud bang from below. Mara jumped. "Elliot, what was that?" Elliot rushed to the basement, calling out, "Tom, you okay?" No answer. He descended slowly, every step creaking beneath his weight. The flashlight beam flickered across the stone walls, across the shelves, and then finally settled on Tom, the contractor, crouched in the far corner. He was staring at something on the ground, unmoving. "Tom?" Elliot asked. The man turned his head slowly. His face was pale, and sweat slicked his forehead. "There's something under the house," he said. Elliot stepped closer. "What do you mean?" Tom pointed at the floor. This isn't just a basement. Someone built an access tunnel beneath it. I found the entrance. Elliot followed the beam of the flashlight. A section of the wall was slightly recessed. The stone there looked newer, almost like a doorway bricked over in a hurry. I tapped on it, Tom said, standing slowly. There's a hollow space behind that wall. I don't know how far it goes, but I heard something moving. A long silence passed between them. Then Tom spoke again, voice layer now. I don't think this house was just abandoned. I think it was sealed. That night, Maura insisted on sleeping with the kids in their room. She brought in a second mattress, pushed Lily's bed beside it, and curled up with Jonah between them. Elliot stayed downstairs. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the doll on the counter. Its mouth had widened overnight. Barely a fraction of an inch. But it had widened. He tried to convince himself it was the humidity, the porcelain shifting. But in the silence, he thought he could hear a faint chattering sound, like tiny teeth clicking together. At 2:13 a.m., the footsteps began. They started in the hallway, slow, deliberate, barefoot, a shuffle more than a step. Elliot rose, listening. The sound moved, past the living room, into the kitchen. But nothing was there. Then the footsteps traveled up the stairs. Mara woke to the sound of breathing just outside the bedroom door. She sat up slowly, holding Jonah close. The doorknob turned once, then stopped. Lily sat bolt upright. "Did you hear that?" Mara nodded. She moved quietly across the room, placing her ear to the wood. No more footsteps, just a whisper. "Open the door." The voice was high-pitched, playful, but it didn't belong to any of them. She backed away. Then the floor beneath her feet vibrated slightly, a deep resonant thud, and then another, as if something large was moving through the walls below. Jonah whimpered, "It's walking in the floor." Mara turned. "What?" He pointed down. "I heard it last night too. It walks around when no one's awake." Lily pulled out her phone. She had left it recording again. They gathered around the screen as she played back the last hour of audio. The static was soft at first. Then came the footsteps, slow, dragging. Then a knock, and then a voice, whispered, crooning, "Come find us down below." Then, unmistakably, came the sound of a child's voice giggling. Not Lily's, not Jonah's. Followed by a scraping sound, like nails on wood or bone against stone. Mara's face had gone pale. "We're not staying here," she said. "We need to leave." But Elliot didn't respond when she shook him awake on the couch. He was ice cold, his lips were blue, and when his eyes finally fluttered open, he said 3 words before collapsing back into unconsciousness. "They touched me at the hospital. The doctors found no injuries, no explanation for the sudden dropping temperature or the faint bruises around his wrists and ankles." When Mara returned to the house to gather a few essentials, she entered cautiously. The lights flickered above her as she moved through the living room. The house felt heavier now. And in the hallway she stopped. A trail of small, wet footprints led from the basement door, all the way up the stairs. Each step shimmered faintly, as if freshly made. She looked back at the door. The padlock was gone. The chain lay in a heap again, unraveled like string pulled loose from a puppet's limb. Behind her, upstairs, Jonah began to scream, and from somewhere deep beneath the house, something answered. A slow, guttural hum, almost like a lullaby, only broken, out of tune, and very, very old. Jonah's scream fractured the morning like shattered glass. Mara dropped the bag she had packed and bolted up the stairs, her heart pounding in her throat. Lily, still in her pajamas, rushed out of her room, her eyes wide and terrified. He was in the corner of the hallway, curled into a ball, facing the wall. His back rose and fell with shallow, rapid breaths. The trail of wet footprints led straight to him and stopped. "Jonah," Mara called, kneeling beside him. "Sweetheart, look at me." He didn't move. She gently turned him toward her. His face was pale, but it wasn't the color that chilled her. It was his expression. Blank, slack-jawed, his eyes wide and unblinking. His mouth opened slightly, as if trying to speak, but no sound came out. Then, suddenly, his lips began to move. Not his voice, not Jonah's voice, but something older, rasping, echoed from his throat. A language she didn't know. It sounded wrong, wet and harsh. Syllables gurgled and snapped like bone and ash grinding beneath boots. A string of sounds that shouldn't belong in the mouth of a 6-year-old boy. Lily backed away. "What is he saying?" "I don't know," Mara whispered, gripping Jonah's shoulders. "Jonah, please, it's Mommy." The guttural words stopped. Jonah blinked once, twice, then gasped for air like someone surfacing from underwater. He fell into her arms, trembling. "They were whispering in my ear," he cried. "They were inside me, and they were laughing." Mara pulled him close, tears stinging her eyes. "We're leaving. Right now." By afternoon, she had packed what they needed and returned to the hospital to bring Elliot home. He was better now, or at least awake, though the bruises on his wrists hadn't faded. When she told him what happened, he was silent. Then he looked at Jonah, who clung to Mara like a shadow, and said softly, "They don't want us to go." They slept that night in the same room, mattresses side by side, lights on, every door locked. But it didn't help. At 2:13 a.m., the sound returned. A soft thump from beneath the floorboards, followed by the unmistakable patter of tiny feet, running. Then came the knocking. It didn't come from the basement this time. It came from the ceiling, above them, inside the attic. 3 knocks, then a pause, then a single whispered word. "Hello." Mara grabbed the baseball bat from beside the bed and crept toward the hallway, heart in her mouth. She opened the attic hatch, slowly, every creak screaming into the stillness. Dust drifted down like ash. She climbed the ladder one step at a time. The attic was empty, almost. In the far corner, something shifted under a tattered sheet. She stepped closer, flashlight trembling in her hand. She yanked the sheet away. A small rocking horse sat there, old, splintered, one eye missing, the kind with rusted wheels instead of rockers. It began to move, back and forth, a slow, deliberate creak with every sway. Creak, creak. Then she heard it, a giggle. She turned, but no one was there. Only the whisper, again, this time in her ear. "You shouldn't have opened the door." She screamed and nearly fell down the ladder. Elliot met her at the bottom, grabbing her arm. What happened? They're not just in the basement, she gasped. They're everywhere! The next morning, Lily brought them something. It's from the local library, she said. I looked up the house. I think I found something. She laid the old article on the table. The headline read, 3 children vanish in Hiddenwell residence. No bodies found. The photo beneath showed their house, but the date was from 40 years ago. The article described a disappearance of 3 siblings. No signs of forced entry. No suspects. But neighbors reported hearing strange sounds from the basement in the weeks leading up to the event. There's more, Lily said. The parents claimed the children were hearing voices and speaking languages they never learned. Mara sat down slowly. Her hands trembled. It's happening again, she whispered. Jonah. That evening, Elliot returned to the basement alone. He didn't tell anyone. He waited until Mara and the kids were asleep, then crept downstairs with a crowbar and flashlight. The recessed wall Tom had found still bore the cracks from earlier. He chipped at the stone. Bit by bit, the mortar gave way. Then he found it. A door. Small, wooden, rotted. He pushed it open. A narrow passage stretched beyond, no more than 3 feet wide. Dirt walls. The air reeked of mildew and something sweet, cloying. He stepped inside. The tunnel stretched downward, farther than it should have. Too far, as if the house extended underground in ways that defied physics. Then he heard the footsteps behind him. Light, barefoot. He turned, shining the beam of his flashlight. Nothing. He moved deeper. A whisper echoed down the corridor. Closer, closer. He should have turned back, but he kept going, until he saw the handprint on the wall, small, child-sized, imprinted in what looked like dry blood, and below it a name scrawled in jagged letters, Jonah. The light flickered. From behind, he felt the presence again, breath on the back of his neck. He turned. The tunnel was empty, but the whisper came again, this time from the dirt itself. Let us in. He ran. Behind him, the walls pulsed, breathing, and the floor shuddered with unseen footsteps chasing him through the dark. He didn't stop until he slammed the basement door shut behind him. And as he did, he saw the doll, still on the kitchen counter. Its eyes were back, and they were staring directly at him. Rain poured harder that night, slapping against the windows with a steady, angry rhythm. Lightning flashed every few seconds, casting flickering shadows that stretched and shrank across the wallpaper like writhing limbs. Thunder rolled through the house like distant growls from something ancient and buried. The Harwicks huddled together in the living room, blankets draped over their shoulders, eyes constantly shifting toward the hallway where the basement door loomed. Mara was the first to speak. "We're not safe here," she whispered. "We need to go." "We can't," Elliot said, his voice flat. Mara turned to him. "What do you mean we can't? You saw what's down there." "I think it follows us," he muttered. "If we leave now, whatever's in the walls, the floors, it'll come with us." Jonah sat on the floor, hugging his knees, his eyes unfocused. He hadn't said much since the incident in the hallway, but now, without looking up, he whispered, "They said I belonged to them." "Jonah," Mara reached out. "What did they say exactly?" They live in the mold, he replied softly, in the cracks in the wood. Lily stood near the fireplace, watching the doll that now sat on the mantel. We need to burn it, she said suddenly. Right now, that thing. It's not just decoration. It's part of it. Elliot didn't argue. He took the doll, its porcelain face still cracked, the eyes now glassy and pitch black, and tossed it into the fire without ceremony. The flames took quickly. The plastic inside bubbled. The face began to melt. But the mouth opened first. A sound came from it. Not a scream, not a voice. A shriek of static, like a television set caught between channels, or 1,000 whispers overlaid in reverse. Jonah screamed and clutched his ears. Mara pulled him away from the fire. Turn it off, she shouted. Elliot grabbed the poker and smashed at the burning doll, breaking it into pieces. The sound stopped instantly. Smoke filled the room, thick and choking. But what was worse was the smell. Sweet, sickly, and familiar. Mara turned toward the hallway and gasped. Black mold had begun to creep up the walls. Thin veins of it spread like fingers, pulsing slightly, alive. It crawled from the baseboards upward, stretching toward the ceiling, leaving trails of rot and wetness in its wake. The wallpaper behind it keeled back, revealing something beneath. Old carvings, symbols etched into the wooden frame of the house itself. I think these are ritual markings, Lily whispered, staring at them. Some kind of containment. Elliot's face turned pale. Someone didn't build this house to live in it. They built it to hold something in. The mold spread faster now, tendrils reaching across the ceiling. And then the sound began again. A wet, ragged breathing from the walls. Slow, steady, growing louder. It wasn't one breath, it was many. Dozens, maybe hundreds. The family backed into the center of the room. Then the lights went out. Total darkness. Only the lightning outside provided momentary glimpses. The walls shifting, bulging, as if something moved just beneath the surface. Elliot grabbed a flashlight and swept it toward the hallway. The mold there was thicker now, and something had emerged from it. A hand, small, child-sized, blackened and shriveled, reaching out of the wall. It twitched. Then a second hand appeared, followed by the outline of a head pressing against the wallpaper from the inside, straining to push through. Lily screamed. The face behind the wall opened its mouth and whispered. Let us breathe. Elliot rushed forward and slammed a bookcase against the wall, blocking it. Upstairs, now, go! They ran. The staircase groaned beneath their feet. More mold began to crawl across the railing, slick and pulsing. Jonah tripped, but Mara caught him and pulled him up. In the hallway above, Lily froze. The attic door had opened on its own. From within, a low moan drifted down. Not human, guttural, choking. Mara pushed past her. Into the bedroom, locked the door. They slammed the door shut and jammed the dresser against it. The breathing continued outside, slow and rhythmic, like the house itself had lungs now. Then, silence, the kind that feels wrong. Jonah stood beside the bed, still trembling. Then he turned slowly and pointed to the Elliot crossed the room and knocked gently on the wall. Nothing. Then he pressed his ear to it. A soft voice whispered back. Not angry, not threatening, pleading. It's so cold, please don't leave us here. He stepped back. His face was pale. That was a girl's voice. There were 3 missing children, Lily said. The article said they were never found. What if? Mara hesitated. What if their spirits were trapped? What if this mold, the breathing, it's not them, but the thing that took them? Or fed on them, Elliot added. And now it wants more. That night, none of them slept. The sounds returned at 2:30. Footsteps in the walls, whispers beneath the floor, and the breathing, always the breathing. But this time, it came with a new sound, a soft, rhythmic knock at the bedroom window. They turned slowly. Lightning flashed, and there, just outside, suspended in the rain, was the face of a child. Eyes hollow, mouth open wide, grinning. The face outside the window vanished with the next flash of lightning. Mara staggered backward, pulling Jonah with her, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you see it?" she whispered. Lily nodded, wide-eyed, her voice trembling. It was a child, but it wasn't alive. Elliot moved to the window, grabbing the curtain and yanking it shut. Rain streaked down the glass, each droplet catching the dim flicker of the storm outside. But behind the rhythmic tap of the rain, there was something else, knuckles knocking, soft and slow. Knock, knock. Not the basement, Elliot said, almost to himself. Not the walls. Now it wants in from outside. They backed away from the window and sat on the floor, the dresser still braced against the bedroom door. Every shadow seemed alive. The room felt smaller, as if the very air were thickening, watching. Jonah leaned against his mother, eyelids fluttering. But the moment he began to drift off, he started whispering again. That same guttural, broken language. Mara shook him gently. "Jonah, sweetheart, stop, please." He opened his eyes. They weren't fully his. For a moment, they looked glassy. Then he blinked, and the normal color returned. "They're showing me things," he murmured. "What things?" Elliot asked, crouching in front of him. Jonah looked down. "There's another doll. It's under the floorboards. She's missing her eyes." Lily's voice was barely audible. "Another one?" "They buried her in the nursery. She used to be a girl." No one spoke. Then Elliot stood. "We check the room. If something's under the floor, we find it. I want to know how deep this goes." The nursery had been used for storage since they moved in. Boxes still sat stacked along the walls, old curtains drawn tight. Dust floated through the air like ash. The smell in the room was worse than before, damp, sour, and thick with something that clung to the back of the throat. Jonah walked straight to the center. "Here," he said, "right here." Elliot knelt, pried up the corner of the old rug, and pressed his hand against the wood. Soft, rotten. With the crowbar, he pried loose one of the floorboards. The stench hit Ben like a wave, mold, decay, and something faintly floral. Underneath, wrapped in decayed fabric, was a small bundle. Mara turned away. Elliot reached down and gently lifted it. It was a doll, porcelain again, but aged, its skin stained with time. Hair falling in strands, and where the eyes should have been, Only hollow sockets stared back. One hand had fingers missing. The other clutched something. A ribbon, faded pink. Why would this be here? Mara asked. Lily picked up a tag tied around the doll's neck. The writing was faded but legible. Abigail, age 7. Watch her eyes. Elliot stared at the tag, then at the doll's empty sockets. She used to be a girl, Jonah whispered again. They put her in the doll to keep her quiet. Who did? Mara asked, her voice cracking. Jonah looked up. The house. Thunder boomed. Then, from the hallway, the breathing began again, heavy this time. Closer. The doorknob turned once, then stopped. Knock, knock, Lily screamed. Elliot grabbed the dresser and shoved it tighter against the door. But then something moved in the corner of the room. The shadows shifted, and the wall began to bulge. Not just bulge, stretch like skin. A face pressed against it from inside. Features half-formed, as if trying to push through from another place. Its mouth opened. The room filled with a low, droning hum. Mara covered Jonah's ears. Then the doll in Elliot's hand shuddered. Its head turned, slowly, toward the wall. A whisper filled the nursery, coming from everywhere and nowhere. She is the key. Then the bulb above them burst. Darkness. Elliot dropped the doll. It hit the floor with a brittle crack, and from the shadows, a voice emerged. This time, a child's voice, feminine, young, sad. Please, help me find them. I can't see. Mara flicked on her phone flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, just enough to see the doll had cracked open at the chest. Inside, something metallic glinted. Elliot reached in carefully. A key, old, iron, ornate. This goes to the sealed tunnel, he said. The door in the basement. Jonah clutched his mother's arm. If you open it, they'll all come out. Then we keep it closed, Mara said. But Lily shook her head. No, what if the only way to stop them is to finish what started? Maybe someone trapped them here. ... Maybe we need to set it right. The walls groaned around them. Dust rained from the ceiling, and in the silence after came a new sound. Not footsteps, not whispers, a lullaby, faint, cracked, off-key, sung in a voice that sounded like a child trying to remember a song from long ago. They listened, frozen, and then Jonah said it aloud. The doll wants her eyes back. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was worse. Gray light seeped through the windows like diluted ash, casting everything in tones of cold cement. Outside, the wind had died, but the trees stood still and wrong, as if listening. Inside, the house held its breath again, waiting. The doll lay broken in the center of the nursery floor, its chest cracked, the iron key beside it like a relic from another age. The empty eye sockets still stared upward. But somehow they felt less lifeless now. Jonah hadn't spoken in over an hour. He sat on the floor with his back against the wall, arms around his knees, rocking slightly. His lips moved now and then, but no sound came out. Jonah, Mara said softly, crouching beside him. Can you hear me? He looked at her with eyes that were too tired for a 6-year-old. They're calling me again. Not just one voice this time. All of them. Mara glanced at Elliot. It's getting worse. Elliot ran a hand through his hair. We need to open the tunnel. I don't want to, but it's calling us to finish something. It won't stop until we do. Lily knelt by the cracked doll. This key, it feels old, too old, like it's been waiting. Waiting for what? Mara asked. To be used, Lily said. To let her out. Or to lock something in. Either way, it's not over. They didn't decide right away. Instead, they gathered in the living room, trying to pretend for a moment that everything was still normal. The fireplace was cold. The lights flickered every few minutes. None of them turned on the television. There was no comfort in noise anymore. Then the phone rang. Mara jumped. So did Lily. Even Elliot flinched. The landline. No one had ever used it. They hadn't even given out the number. Elliot stared at it as it rang again. Then again. He picked it up, held it to his ear. Hello? He said cautiously. At first, only static. Then, a voice. Soft. Familiar. Elliot. His grip tightened on the receiver. Who is this? He asked. You don't remember me, but I remember you. We all do. He took a step back. What do you mean? The voice giggled. It was a child's voice now, high and playful, then suddenly deeper, rasping. You let us in. The line went dead. Elliot slowly placed the phone back on the hook. They know our names, he whispered. A crash came from upstairs. Then running footsteps. They bolted from the room, Elliot first. Mara behind him. The hallway was empty, but the bedroom door was wide open. And Jonah was gone. Jonah! Mara screamed. They scoured every room. The attic, the bathrooms, the crawl space. Nothing. Then Lily shouted from the basement. She had found the hatch in the floor open. A gust of cold, stagnant air rolled up from below. Elliot dropped to his knees and peered into the dark. A ladder led down into blackness. He grabbed a flashlight and descended. Mara followed. Then Lily. The tunnel hadn't changed, but it felt tighter. The walls were damp and pulsing softly, like veins under skin. The breathing returned almost immediately. Surrounding them, whispering from stone and dirt. Then a sound ahead. Laughter. They turned a corner and found Jonah standing in front of the sealed door. The key in his hand. Jonah, Mara said breathlessly, what are you doing? They said I'm part of the house now, he replied. No, you're not, she said, stepping toward him. He looked at her, eyes glassy. They said I have to be the one. Before she could reach him, he slid the key into the rusted lock. It turned smoothly. The door groaned. Elliot pulled Jonah away just as the stone creaked inward. A rush of cold swept over them. The flashlight flickered. Inside was a room. Circular, low-ceilinged, walls covered in black mold, and writing carved in spirals. And in the center, 3 small chairs. Each one faced a wall. Each one had a doll sitting on it. One with no eyes, one with no mouth, one with no hands. They all turned their heads toward the doorway, and from behind them, something else stirred. A figure, tall, too tall. Its face was hidden beneath a veil of black hair, skin gray and stretched thin. Its arms were wrong, too long, fingers tapering into claws made of bone. It didn't walk, it floated, and it whispered. Mara. She froze. No one ever told me your name, it said. But I've always known it. The voice changed. Lily. Then, Jonah, come back. He took a step forward, dazed. Mara grabbed him, pulling him close. Elliot stepped in front of them. What do you want? He asked. The thing tilted its head. To finish the game. Then, the dolls began to scream all at once. The room trembled. Dust rained from above. The breathing grew louder, faster, frantic. Lily pulled out her phone and turned on the recording. The moment it started capturing sound, the thing shrieked. A sound like glass breaking underwater. And the dolls began to crack, their hollow eyes glowing. Run! Elliot shouted. They bolted from the chamber, Jonah in Mara's arms, the shrieking echoing behind them like a cyclone of voices. They climbed the ladder, slammed the hatch. And for the first time in days, the basement was silent. But the phone rang again. This time, it didn't stop. Mara picked it up, hands trembling. No voice, only one sound. A child humming a lullaby. The same one from the nursery. The same one from the doll's mouth. And then a final whisper. One name left. The phone went dead. Not with a click, not with a tone. Just silence. A flat, endless silence that somehow felt worse than static. Mara held the receiver a moment longer, her knuckles white, before slowly setting it back on the cradle. They sat in the living room, huddled close. Every lamp and light in the house switched on. The basement hatch had been nailed shut. The dolls were locked in a metal box and buried behind the tool shed. But the air in the house had not changed. If anything, it had grown thicker. The walls pulsed now, even in daylight. A slow, almost imperceptible rhythm, a heartbeat. We can't stay here another night, Mara said. Her voice sounded distant, like it had to pass through fog to reach her own ears. We have to, Elliot said. We open the front door and it's going to follow us. It's not tied to this place anymore. You heard it, Lily said. It said one name left. Whose name? They all looked at each other. It's mine, Elliot whispered. No, Mara said quickly. No, don't say that. It already knows. It called all of us. Except me. Until now. They sat in silence. The shadows under the furniture were longer than they should have been. The lights flickered, even though the storm had passed. Jonah curled up beside his sister and fell asleep, clutching her hand. Elliot stood and went to the breaker box. Elliot, Mara called after him. I'm making sure the lights stay on tonight, he said. They did. At 2:13 a.m., when the house would usually go dark, it didn't. Every light stayed on. But the power staying on didn't stop the voices. They came anyway. This time, they didn't whisper. They called. First from the vents, then from the radiators, then from inside the walls. Elliot! Elliot, come see us! Elliot, it's your turn! Jonah bolted upright in the middle of the living room, eyes wide. She's in the hallway, he said. Mara stood slowly. Who? She doesn't have a face anymore, Jonah whispered. They turned toward the hallway. The light there was still on, but something moved at the far end. It shuffled forward, not walking, dragging. A shape, tall, slender, long arms, no face. Where a face should have been was a stretched, raw patch of skin that pulsed gently with each breath. It stopped halfway down the hall and raised one finger, pointed at Elliot, and spoke without a mouth. "Come see." Elliot stepped forward. "No," Mara shouted. "Don't you dare." He turned to her. His voice was calm. "It started with me, the door, the basement. The first night I went down there, I woke something. You didn't know," she said. "You were trying to protect us. But I let it in." He looked at Lily and Jonah. "They're not going to stop, unless someone closes the door again from the inside." "No," Mara said. "There has to be another way." "Maybe, but I don't think we have time to find it." The lights began to flicker. The faceless thing moved closer, then stopped at the nursery door. It reached out with a long, pale finger and pushed the door open. A wave of cold poured out. The sound of humming drifted down the hallway. The lullaby again. Elliot stepped past the others. The moment he crossed the threshold, the lights brightened, painfully so. For a heartbeat, every bulb in the house surged to white. Then, all at once, silence. The lights held. Elliot was gone. The nursery was empty. Only the cracked doll remained in the center of the room. Its eyes had returned. They blinked, and then, with a soft click, all the lights went out. The lights didn't just go out. They were swallowed. One moment the house was flooded with sterile brightness. The next, every bulb extinguished in unison with a hiss, as if something had sucked the electricity from the wires. Darkness dropped like a curtain, thick, immediate, total. Mara screamed for Elliot. "Elliot!" she called into the black. No answer. She stumbled toward the nursery, feeling her way along the wall, the cold biting through her fingertips. Lily followed behind, holding Jonah's hand tight, whispering his name like a prayer. The nursery door stood wide open. The room was colder than the rest of the house, like stepping into a crypt. Mara flicked her phone flashlight on, the beam shaking as her hand trembled. The light landed on the cracked porcelain doll in the middle of the floor. Its eyes were open now, glass orbs, deep, bottomless black. As if it had been waiting, she stepped closer. "Elliot?" she whispered again. The beam swept the room. Nothing, no sign of him. And yet, the wallpaper was moving. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, but then she saw it clearly. The pattern of faded rabbits and toy trains bubbling outward, the seams writhing. Beneath the paper, something breathed, a low, wet, rhythmic huffing, as if lungs the size of the house were exhaling against the walls. Then came the dragging. From the hallway, Mara turned just in time to see Lily fall to the ground, her flashlight tumbling from her hand, spinning across the wood floor. Jonah screamed as something invisible wrapped around his ankle and pulled. "No!" Mara lunged forward. Jonah was yanked down the hallway, heels scraping against the wood, arms flailing. His cries echoed through the house like a siren. Lily dove forward, grabbing one of his wrists. Mara grabbed the other. They pulled. Whatever had him pulled harder. It was like a tug of war with something they couldn't see, couldn't touch, only feel. Coldness radiated from where it held him, an ancient chill that felt deeper than air, deeper than death. "Jonah, hold on," Mara cried. He screamed again, high and raw. "She wants to take me where Daddy went. She says he's already part of the floor," Mara sobbed. "I'm not letting you go." With one final pull, they ripped him free. He fell into Mara's arms, shaking, crying, covered in something slick and black. They looked back. The hallway was empty, but the dragging sound didn't stop. It just kept going, away from them, back toward the basement. A sound without a source, a threat without form. Mara scooped Jonah into her arms. "We're leaving. I don't care if it follows us. I'm done." She ran to the front door. Lily fumbled with the locks, throwing them open. The moment the door creaked, wind roared through the house like a scream. Every light bulb shattered. The walls groaned. And then a voice. Not a whisper this time, a command. "Stay." They froze. The house spoke. And then it showed them. Every surface became a screen. The walls rippled and bled shadows. Faces emerged from the wood, stretching outward, mouths open in silent screams. The ceiling pulsed with images. Children with hollow eyes, dolls with stitched mouths, hands reaching through dirt. And Elliot, they saw him in the floor, literally in it, his face pressed beneath warped wood grain, his hands clawing at the seams between the boards. His eyes rolled toward them, wide, terrified. He mouthed 2 words, "Help me." Then his face sank, swallowed by the boards, vanishing beneath the planks like water closing over a drowning man. The house quieted. The wind stopped. The door swung shut again. On its own, Mara sank to her knees, holding Jonah, her mind blank. Lily stood silently, staring at the wall, where one word was now scratched in. Below. "What does it want?" Lily whispered. Jonah answered, "She wants us all, but she'll settle for one." The lullaby began again, not through a phone, not through the dolls, through the walls themselves. A chorus of voices hummed the same broken tune. Children and something older behind them, humming like throatless ghosts. Lily looked at Mara. "If we don't go back into the tunnel, if we don't face her, we lose him forever." Mara didn't move. Jonah sat up in her arms and said very softly, "She's not alone down there anymore." The nursery was quiet now, too quiet. Mara stood in the center of the room, holding Jonah close to her chest, his heartbeat fluttering like a trapped bird. Lily crouched beside them, a flashlight in her hand, its beam flickering despite the fresh batteries. All around them, the house held its breath again, but it felt like a trick this time. The calm before something older and far crueler than a storm. Mara stared at the floor. "He's down there. Elliot's still alive," she said. "We saw him." Lily nodded slowly. "He's not the first to be taken, but maybe he can be the last." Jonah pointed toward the hallway, to the hatch that led back down into the tunnel. "She's waiting," he said. "She said she'll open the door herself this time." Mara looked at her children. Her hands trembled. But then she stood. "We go together," she said. "We finish this." They moved through the house in silence, flashlights in hand, each creak of the floorboards echoing like bones snapping underfoot. The walls breathed softly again, faint but unmistakable, like the house was listening, aware of every step. When they reached the hatch, the nails were already pulled free. The door sat open. Cold drifted upward, thick and wet. It smelled like rotting wood and long-forgotten childhood fears. The darkness below was not just absence of light. It felt alive. Mara climbed down first. Lily followed, gripping Jonah's hand tightly. They entered the tunnel once more. The dirt walls pulsed faintly, veins of black mold twitching with movement beneath the surface. The symbols carved into the stone still glowed faintly with old energy, their edges bleeding like open wounds. And ahead, the circular chamber waited. But it was no longer empty. The dolls were gone. The 3 chairs stood vacant, and in the center, a door. A true door this time, black wood, iron hinges. The same twisting pattern carved into its surface as the markings they'd seen behind the wallpaper. The air around it pulsed with whispers. Dozens, hundreds, voices layered atop one another, crying, singing, laughing, sobbing. And one voice, beneath them all, Elliot's. Mara stepped forward. "I'm here," she whispered. "Let him go." The door groaned and opened, not into another room, into blackness. Not darkness, something else, something vast and endless and wrong. The kind of void that dreams crawl out of and nightmares return to. Inside, a figure stood. At first glance, she looked like a little girl, but she was not. Her limbs were too long, her face too smooth. No nose, no lips, only the impression of features like a porcelain mask softened by heat. Her eyes were pits of void. Her mouth stretched too far when it moved. "Trade," she whispered. Mara shook her head. "No." "Trade," the girl said again, voice rising, layered with others beneath it. "1 for 1. That is the rule. I'm not giving you my child." Then all 3 stay. The shadows behind the girl shifted, and then Elliot appeared, pale, dirty, eyes sunken, but alive. He took a step forward. "Mara," he said, voice cracking, "don't listen. She lies." The girl turned her head. Her face peeled back like paper, revealing rows of teeth. Too many. Growing sideways, dripping black sap. She screamed. The tunnel shook. Jonah screamed with her, clapping his hands over his ears. Lily fell to her knees. Mara stood her ground. "You want to trade?" she shouted. "Then take me. Let them go. Let Gilead go. Let the others go. I'll stay." The girl stilled. The screams stopped. The void pulsed once. Then the voice returned. "Accepted." The blackness surged forward. Elliot was thrown from the shadows, gasping, crawling across the floor. The girl stepped toward Mara. But Jonah moved. He stepped in front of his mother. "No," he said. The girl paused. "You took my daddy. You scared my sister. You made me hear your songs." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and cold. A piece of the broken doll. Its eye. He held it out. "You dropped this," he said. The girl's face twitched. She reached for it. The moment her hand touched the glass, everything broke. The walls of the tunnel split. The ceiling cracked open. Light, real light, poured in from above, flooding the chamber like a flood of warmth and fire. The girl screamed, her form dissolving, limbs flailing, twisting into smoke. The black door shattered. The voices stopped. Silence. Real silence. They stood in the tunnel, dazed. Elliot reached out and touched Mara's face. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered. She pulled him close, burying her face in his neck. They climbed out of the tunnel as the house above them groaned, cracked, then began to collapse in on itself. Walls folding, ceilings caving. No fire, no explosion, just a quiet implosion, as if the house was retreating into the dirt it had always belonged to. By morning, nothing remained but the foundation. They stood on the edge of the ruins, holding hands. Lily looked to Jonah. "How did you know what to do?" He shrugged. She said she couldn't find her eyes. Mara looked down at him. "Are you okay?" He nodded, but when he turned for the briefest moment, his eyes reflected the sunlight in a way no human eyes should. And somewhere, deep beneath the earth, a lullaby began again, soft, faint, but not gone, never gone.